welcome to another amazing day at fmtraining.tv. My name is Margaret. I'll be your broadcast engineer for today. Currently have cat, so if you hear unexpected meows, I'm very sorry. Welcome. We're talking about the FileMaker and Claris platforms, everybody. I am here with the wonderful Jake Scheele and Christian Olson. I had to remember my Christians for a second. Not that I don't know your last name, Christian, but I've had Christian Schmitz on many times recently, so my brain was going to default into that.
That's okay. Your dad just interchanges us when we're both on. The other day, he told people they could hire Christian Smith if they contacted RCC, which I thought was a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd agree with that. So welcome everybody. It's Friday. Today we're having a really cool sessions with script tracking and FileMaker with Jake Scheele, which is awesome. We had Jake Scheele on I'm going to say about a month ago, 3 weeks ago, and he covered a really interesting topic, and this came up, and people asked for it to be discussed, so we're here to talk about it. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are going to be 3 days of existing FileMaker file design and modernization workshop with Nick. Basically, if you've been around for the past couple days, Nick has been doing a live makeover of one of the live streams people's files. They stripped the data out of it for the most part and sent it in to us, and Nick is basically renovating it live. It's been a really cool series. We're going to be doing the last few days of that for 7, 8, and 9. If you're like, man, I really like what happened to this file, I'd like it to happen to mine, you can send it to us. Nick is kind of looking for another file or two maybe to do live as well as some more examples. But other than that, on Thursday we have script triggers, introduction review for beginners and intermediates. If you'd like to support the channel, we would greatly appreciate it. We have our FM training annual subscription bundles. We basically pick one. They're all 100+ hours of really high energy video training. Christian is a trainer in at one point. I think even Jake shows up somewhere in it. But we cover a whole variety of topics. Pretty much everything you need to know to become like a basic developer in your own right, or to like recap. If you're like, oh, I know a lot about all these topics, but man, I haven't looked at relationships in years. Be a good idea to pick up this and walk your way through it. With all the introductory spiel being over, what are we doing today, Jake?
Hey, yeah, first off, thanks everyone for coming, and thanks RC team for having me back again. Always good to be on the stream and share some cool stuff. So the whole inspiration for what I
built... twisted our arm, Jake. You came on a few weeks ago and teased people with some nice features, and then they didn't show them what they wanted. So Jake is actually here by popular demand. All of you are out there buzzing, and I'm one of those people. I'm actually really excited that you showed me this, Jake, to give us this tool so we can steal all your hard work.
Thank you. Yeah, I've actually been using this tool for like 4 years. It's looked a lot uglier when I first built it 4 years ago, but it's come a long way since then. And I'm really excited to have gotten it to a point where I can share it with everyone. I hope you guys like it. And yeah, I teased it a little bit. I think it was like 6 weeks ago in like early February that I shared that before with my custom functions stream that I had done. And yeah, I'm really excited to share it with everyone. So here, I can get my screen going. We can get an overview going of what we're going to be talking about today. So what this is an add-on that you can install into your files that give you the ability, it creates a table called sessions. And sessions is, you get one record for every time a user logs in on their device. So when I log in on my phone, it creates one session through FMGo, and if I log in through my computer at the same time, I'll have 2 active sessions, one for each device, and that goes across server connections, WebDirect, multiple users, the works. And what's really cool with this is the whole challenge I was trying to overcome was I was doing some scripting on iPad, and I had a script that was running great on FileMaker Pro on my computer, but when we ran it on the iPad, I was just getting errors and I could not figure out what was going wrong. So I ended up going off the deep end and building a whole tool for it that allowed me to capture the scripts that are run during a session on an iPad and capture the errors that occur during the scripts that are run and send them back to Pro in real time, or sessions are completed. So when you log out, they're automatically logged, but there's some tricks to get them to update in real time. But
hey,
yeah,
Jake, not to interrupt you, but just a quick little bit of housekeeping. As you start to show this off, I'm anticipating that people are going to go, that's really cool. How do I get it? So as people are watching this today, how can they get your add-on?
Yes, so we are putting out an updated version of Wolfpack that's going to include this. So for those who don't know, Wolfpack is an add-on tool that Christian here actually put together that allows you to easily install add-ons into your FileMaker solutions.
And Margaret, the X9 version is not, that's perfect, Jake. The X9 version is not up yet, but it should be momentarily. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm literally just revving it inside of our database right now, so it'll be up in like 5 seconds. So
perfect. Sorry to interrupt you, Jake. I know that as you start to show this, I'm going to see those questions come in. And as someone who builds for a customer on iOS, yeah, it's a pain in the neck sometimes trying to troubleshoot these. So show us how you've done it.
Yeah, of course. So like I said, whenever a user logs in, it's going to create that new record. So that's all going to be controlled through the on first window open and on last window close script triggers on the file. And it captures all sorts of data about the device. So what we're looking at right now is the master view. So this is a developer only layout. You can run a script sessions view to open this up. And when you install the layout, or when you install the add-on, I mean, it brings a button onto your screen that's just open. I think it's view sessions is where it says, and it just brings up this row here where it shows all of the sessions that have run. So I had run a few earlier today on a couple different devices. So what we're looking at is 4 different logins that I had done, and you can see the date and time. So we've got the start and the end time of the session, and then we've got some details. So we've got user details. I got some information about the user that was signed in for the session, some information about the device, and then some information about FileMaker. We really just get the version number and any plugins were installed when it ran. You can flag your sessions, and we can track local scripts, and it's going to be, it would say server if it was run on the server here. And we have some color coding options too. There's not a lot of records here to show that, but we've got like yellow for server, red for currently running server scripts, because you don't want those to be running for very long usually.
Hey Jake, real quick, what's the flagging for? How do you use that? Is that just so you can find
like
those sessions later?
Thing. So right now, the oldest file that I have this for that's used the most, that I built like 4 years ago, it's got 350,000 session records right now. I just checked the other day. So, and they're usually making 100 per day, new session records getting created. Every single time a script is run on the server, a new session record gets created.
So if you're investigating certain sessions, this flag is a way for you to quickly and easily find those. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect. Okay.
So if I flag one, we've got the little flag marker. And then I didn't put too much filtering options, but I do have a very inclusive search bar. So you could search just about any field on here and it'll return your results. And of course, you can perform finds like we always can. But the real sauce here, the good stuff, is the scripts. So every script that was run, now not every single script, but every script we log, and we'll about script logging in just a second. Session tracking needs, sorry, I'm seeing a question come through from David Angel. Session tracking need to stay open at a client to catch sessions running.
I'm wondering if he's talking about the record versus the user session.
Added the layout.
We're going to dive a little bit more into how it works, and I think that's going to answer your question, David. So we'll get to that shortly here. But looking at what we get, so it's going to go through all the different scripts that were run. So I'm going to mention the one that has errors. We've got that red exclamation point showing one that returned results. So these were the results that were returned from that, and we've got some information about the script. Oh, looks like there's a... I've noticed when you install the add-on, sometimes button bars, the time is stretched weird, and just going into layout mode and back fixes it. It's a weird one, but it shows what layout you were on when the script began, what layout you were on when it ended. There are some fields I'm going to show you that you can use to log what record you were viewing when the script ended. And then of course you can view the parameters that were passed to the script. So jumping a little bit into how this works.
Hang on, Jake, though, you got to go back there for a second. Because I know this, but you just glossed over something really big. Result error, line 25, line 28. I know you're going to tell us about this later, but is that, what is that?
So in this, it's almost easier to pull up the script that was run at the same time. So let's get the script open. So this is an example script that I had written to use to capture errors. It shows how you would capture errors with this method. It uses 3 custom functions. At the beginning of the script, we have capture script header, and that's going to capture the current script time. And then at the very end, capture script details JSON. This doesn't need to be in an exit script. You could put it in a set variable right above, but it doesn't return anything. You can, if you do need to return something in this script, you could, put some variable there and just append it. But yeah, something like that, you can pass results. But getting to the capturing of errors, I've got a couple example script steps. So I've got a go to object and a go layout. And both of those, I put in an object name and a layout name that does not exist. So when it runs this, it is going to return an error saying object not found and layout not found. So all I had to do to capture that error, so say that wasn't there and we're running our script, set a variable. The name of the variable doesn't matter. You can put whatever you want. I just do E because it's short. And then we'll put in capture error, nothing else. And that's all you need to do to capture it. So if an error was returned, if this ran successfully, nothing would happen. But if it gets any error except for 0, basically, it's going to capture the line number that the error occurred at and what the error code and the message was for that. And as you can see, if there are multiple errors in the script, you can see all of them that happen. It does do a couple more things. When you run capture error, it sets a variable last error. So then you could use that variable to run error capturing. So let's say if I'm running my script and I don't want it to proceed if this fails. You could say if last error, show custom dialog, and exit script. And so on. That last error variable can be very useful. So that is kind of the quick, or not going to say quick, but I guess, are there any questions so far?
Well, Jake, I'll throw one. I can't answer my own question by paying attention to the layout, but it does look like when you set your E value capture, it's getting the line number above it. So it's not showing you where you captured the error, but where the true error came from.
Correct.
Very cool.
That is correct. One thing worth noting, the line number capturing is only possible because of a very recent FileMaker function that came out with 19.6.1.
And suggestion for you, Jake, keep going with your flow. I like that you've got Discord open or looking at it to answer questions there, but Margaret's going to make sure you see questions as they come up.
Okay,
so
sounds
don't
good.
feel like you got to stop every moment. We'll make sure every question gets answered. And everyone, keep bringing those questions in. We got to make Margaret work today. That's her job, is to watch the questions and interrupt as needed.
Well, speak of the devil, let's do one real fast. It just popped up. I'm assuming variable last error is being set in the capture error custom function.
It is.
So Jake, I threw you off your rhythm earlier. I was asking, I was like, oh, I noticed that the line code is in there. That's really cool because you get errors and it's hard to know where they are. So because of 19.6.1, you said?
Yes, thank you.
We can get that specific info?
Correct. So if you are running a version of FileMaker older than 19.6.1, the main thing to note here is that you want to use capture error old. The only real difference between them is it uses get last error location, and this will say function missing on any older versions of FileMaker and break the function. So that's why I had to put the old one in there for you to use. I would of course rename it from the old. And
fortunately, none of our viewers and no one out there is using older versions of FileMaker. Everyone's on the most current version right now.
I was on 19.5 till last week, so I was guilty. So the only difference with the old is you do need to pass the line number as an UNL parameter. You can pass empty string. Usually I wait until I'm done writing the script because they do move often as you're changing things around with the script. But yeah, you can just pass the line number as a parameter and it will capture it like the current one does.
And Jake, something I'm thinking might be helpful for the audience, and I'm hopefully not wrong here. I know you've got the sample script and it's really useful, and you showed this to me, but maybe something that would be a little helpful for some users. If you were starting a new script and you didn't have all this stuff on screen, how do you utilize this tool?
Sure. So I will be honest with you. I have a script template. Every time I start up a new script, I copy paste my script template because it is less work that way.
That's a really handy thing. I'm glad you do that.
So here, I can just show you what my script template looks like quick, and then I can show you what it would look like absolutely from scratch, brand new script with nothing in it. So basically, this is my script template. It's got some comments at the top, so I could say what the script does. Initialization sets these important things that prevent a user from being able to hit the escape key to cancel a script while it's running. Error capture prevents them from getting the FileMaker messages we don't want them to see. And usually I want to freeze the window. And in it, of course, capture the script start time.
So for our viewers that are watching that might have different parts, that line 7, that's like the bread at the start of the sandwich, if you will. You got to have that in there. Okay.
And that's what I'm in the script I'm going to create in just a second too. This part isn't usually in there. Usually it's just some blank lines for me to start with. And then I can just throw in my code from there. But starting a fresh one. Again, this variable name does not matter. You can do whatever you want. We'll capture the script. And then let's say we want our script to go to a layout, enter find mode, and perform a find. And I filled out what the layout name is. So after you have your perform find script step, that is the script step that you want to capture for. You want to make sure the find was successful. You want to make sure I found records, or if you didn't, you want to handle that. So then we can run a capture error on that script step. And this will work on any native FileMaker script step. For the capture error portion, I do have a way for logging errors in any like plugin script steps, but.
And as M. Johnson said, so that's basically using the last capture get last error, but you're encoding it into kind of like a JSON array. Is that the right?
Basically, all capture error does is here. We'll take a look at it real quick. You're making
a list of the errors, right?
It used to be a list of an errors. I did update it to an array very recently, and I do like that a lot better because then you've got the key value pair where the key is your line number and the value is the message. But yeah, this is where it sets the last error variable. And
so throughout the script, you kind of repeat that piece. So you got to have the first piece, our piece of bread. Then we can have as many toppings or condiments inside the sandwich as we want. Those are all of your errors. And then well, go ahead.
And then let's say after you perform your find, you get to the found set of records that you want. You want to do a relookup field contents on some field, but you want to make sure that worked. So you will capture the error there as well. Now that's great for setting the errors variable, because what this does is it sets the variable errors. And I usually do put it at the top. And I'll show you why in a second. That's just because I've got the monkey bread syntax coloring, which is a very useful tool for making sure your variables aren't missing. So the last piece to writing a script with this is you need your capture script details JSON. And ultimately, whatever you pass into as a parameter to this script will be the script results that are stored. Whenever you run a script, it stores them in the errors variable. So usually you're gonna pass the errors variable, because that's where all the errors that capture error stores.
I'm sorry, so at the very top of your script, you started to make a variable for error. You didn't save it. And that's because errors
I wanted this message to pop up.
You do want that message to pop up.
Well, I wanted to show you guys that this message pops up.
Gotcha.
So this variable errors is set during this custom function. So it's not actually declared anywhere in the script. I
gotcha. So if you want to return the error to the script that called this, that's what you do.
You don't have to declare it up here. This is completely optional. but it gets rid of that message.
But if this was a PSOS script and you gathered some errors, that would allow you to bring them back and display them to the client?
Correct, because as you know, a local variable is local. Once the script ends, the errors variable is cleared and gone. You have to pass that somewhere. Now, the capture script details JSON script stores it in a global variable so that it's accessible outside of the script. Now,
and how does that then go get added to the session record?
Two different ways to do it. So here, let's save what we're doing here. That's going to be on last window close is the short answer. So sessions.
So for each of your scripts, do you just do you start them with a window opening and a window closing to trigger that? Or it doesn't matter as long as the window closes it? So so all of that stuff is just getting stored into a variable until like a final window closes, and then it goes and gets added to the session record?
Yes, and I think it might be beneficial to take a step back and talk about the initial setup. So when you first install this, it's not going to work out of the box. You have to set it up on your script trigger on your file. So if I go to my file and go to File Options and go to Script Triggers, and I've got them assigned on here, now it's going to be very likely that you already have script triggers assigned to your files. What you need to do is take the existing scripts that you have and subscript these scripts to them. This will open the session, and this of course will close it. So these, for those who don't know, script triggers will run. They're the very first scripts that run. This is the very first script that runs when a file is opened up, and this is the very last one that runs when you close the last window.
Gotcha. So when you call a PSOS script, it's going to trigger that open, and as PSOS ends, it's going to close it to create that log for you.
Correct. And that's something I did the longest time, that when you run, so I'm running a file locally, I perform a script on the server, that begins a new session on the server. So as far as the server is installed, the server is just a computer. The computer literally opens up FileMaker and opens up your file, and then it acts like its own user. It runs the on first window open script, and when it's done running the PSOS that you have to run, it will run the on last window close script.
So that's really useful too. Then if you don't see the sessions closing out, you know that you've got some sort of issue with PSOS. I imagine
Correct.
For the local clients, the only susceptibility to this is if the file crashes, you're not going to get your closed down.
That is correct. I did want to touch on this at some point. So you can see how we've got the array sessions. That means they have a sign out time. Now, what happens here is when you on the last window close, it goes to the sessions, performs a find for the current session, and sets the logout time and stores the scripts. Now, if you force quit FileMaker, your file crashes, you close the tab on WebDirect, or you swipe up on the app on iPhone and it quits FileMaker, that will forcefully close the session and you won't have any record of it. My somewhat consistent workaround, I still see some issues with it, but they honestly don't bug me enough to do too much about it, is that when they log in the next time, it performs a find. It looks for any sessions that are still open that shouldn't be. It uses persistent ID to check that, because you can be logged in with multiple devices at the same time. That's not a problem. It looks for sessions with the same user, with the same persistent ID that are open, marks them as forced closed, and then...
Gotcha. So you close those sessions out, but indicate that we lost some of that information. So again, for server, this is demonstrably helpful. And for users who are logging out, you are able to gather all that information. For our sales guy who doesn't know what closing an application is, it might be less useful, but it would bring to our attention, like, hey, Ryan's decided he's not going to close out a FileMaker at all anymore.
Yeah, and then you can search these sessions that were, if you type the word
That's
right,
useful.
Search for any forced closed sessions.
And Margaret, you said you got a couple questions for Jake?
Yep, just letting you guys know so we can do them real quick. One question is referring to the bread analogy earlier. Please explain why that is like the bread.
Jake, that was me doing that. I'm sorry. Do you want to go back to your script? I'll let you do it, but...
Oh, the script. Yep. Sorry, I don't remember which part we were talking about there.
Just go to like your new script that you're working on there. So sorry about this. I like analogies. And so the way that I'm in my head, and this may work for other people, not for everybody, see this is at the top of the script. Like I see a sandwich here. And the very top of the script has that initialize line 1 capture script header. So that's like one piece of the sandwich or the bread, if you will. And then inside of it, our meat, our lettuce, everything else are these set variable e captures, which we can have many versions of. But then we need to close our sandwich out. It's got to have bread on both sides. And the bottom piece of the bread is that exit script, capture script details. So if Jake's feature is a sandwich, the bread is the initialize and the capture details, and the stuff in the middle is his air stuff. At least that's how my mind works. Hopefully that didn't confuse everyone else there.
Hopefully that answers that question, William. And the next question, does it work on Mac or iPad as well as under Windows?
Works on everything I've tested so far. So WebDirect, server, iPhone, iPad,
cool.
Everything FileMaker runs on.
Cool. And then next question, which is related to the current topic. Your screen shows a forced close question mark. How do you capture that?
I can show you. We'll take a look at the startup script just right now. I did want to show you guys really quick that you could do you don't need to pass the errors variable necessarily. You could pass in whatever you want. It doesn't need to be an array, doesn't need to be literally whatever you want. It could be your error message. So any text string, and that will show up. Like if this would probably error out if I run it right now. Enter fine mode. There is also, we'll touch on this in a moment, but recent scripts that ran. But anyway, going back to that, let's look at the sessions open. So this is that startup script. So first thing it's going to do is go to the sessions layout. It puts it off to the side of the screen so that you don't have to see it. And then it only does this if you're on the server. The server can have multiple running at the same time. But it performs a find for any records that have the same persistent ID and same user ID and that have a status of true. And if it finds any of them, it force closes them. One thing we are going to touch on is the ID user logged in to get that related to your user recs. Yeah, I've got that on my checklist to go through. And then on close, this one's a bit more simple, just finds the current session and closes it out. Hope that answers that question. They don't get captured immediately. So if your FileMaker crashes and you don't open it again for 3 days, it's not going to log that it force closed for 3 days until the next time that you log in, unfortunately. There is no other way that if it force crashes, there's no way for us to interact with records. There's no way to update the session to say that the crash happened. So the only way to know is the next time they log in. But usually when they crash, they open it right away, is the good news to get back in. So one thing I did want to touch on was updating a session script before a user logs out. Right now, if you look at a session, normally it doesn't show, like, here, how can I explain this? Here, one thing worth touching on first is that we've got this variable session scripts. The end of a script has the capture script detail JSON, and that sets this variable session scripts. And that is an array, and you don't really need to understand how all of the array portions of it works. Session scripts, just to kind of give a background of how things are working in the background. So this is an array of every script that ran. It's a lot less readable than the virtual list portal that we have, but what it stores is the script result. So, for the current scripts that ran, they didn't have a script result. So let's instead look at the one that we were just looking at, script results. And since the record didn't have any scripts that were ran, let's look at this one. So that's an array of the scripts that were ran. Now, this field doesn't get set until the session gets closed. So if we look at that closing session script, when the user logs out, performs a find for that current session, and it stores the script results right there. Right now, that's the only place that it does it. All you would need to do is basically set that field. So the hard part with that is context. The whole thing is context. You can't set a field without the sessions being related to the current loop that you're on. So what I had thought to do is find a consistent place in your file where, like I did the navigation menu. Sorry, I'm not explaining this super well. Here, let me pull up my example here. Basically, the thought behind it is you find something that users are consistently doing. I was doing a script for navigation. Whenever users navigate, they run that common script, and you can then maybe relate sessions to navigation, or maybe your home screen. You can relate sessions to your home screen, a layout that users are frequently navigating to. You know for sure you're related to sessions. Now, let's say you're running a specific script and you're trying to capture the results on that one script. You could just take whatever context you're currently in there and relate sessions to it, and then set the field. Let's see, basically, if we wanted to take this new script that we wrote and capture what had happened, what we'd want to do is, rather than capturing it right here, we'll do a set variable. And then right after that, we can do a set field. Now, the part on here, that's kind of tricky is you want to make sure that you're setting the correct session. Sorry, there's like 14 different ways that I could explain this. So what happens
Jake, when you finish with that, I've
session?
got a suggestion for you. Go ahead and finish with that part, but I got a suggestion for you about that.
Okay. So whenever the on first window script opens and it creates the new session, it stores the current primary key of the session record in a global variable ID session. And you can use that all sorts of places. Right now, it's only mainly used in the close session to know which one to perform a find for. But what I usually do is you can say make a relationship. So we can go in, say GID sessions, or you could even say something like current sessions. Make that a global field, and then have that, since it's a global field, when you first start up the script, it's going to be empty when you first start up the window. So we'll set.
So I think what you're saying is, in any table you're in, if you wanted to update a live session record, you could make a connection with it, establish that connection with your global, and then set stuff over to it.
That's correct.
That's really nifty, Jake. I'm gonna venture on some of the quietness that I'm hearing. You showed this to me multiple times, and it's taken me a while to digest all of it. And one of the things that I think is so cool about what you set up, absent even some of the more advanced stuff, is how easy you can put this into a file and it kind of just works and does something useful for us. As we kind of look at these scripts, sometimes I think it's a little overwhelming. Could you show us, I don't know if you have a copy of Starting Point or something on your computer or another solution. If people out there have their own database and they wanted to add what you have to it, I know you showed us that you put it in the startup window and the close-up window, but could you kind of show us the flow of adding this to an existing database and how you would add some tracking to a script that's already in there?
I can. So I don't.
We do that.
I'll have to see what my most recent version of Starting Point is that I have. Would it be all right if I just did like a starter solution from FileMaker, like the contacts?
Sure.
Okay.
I just think that it would be, I know Ken agreed that it'd be nice to see you add this as something, because I think for everyone else out there, they're like, okay, this does something for me. It looks like it's somewhat easy to install, but you're sharp and you've worked on this so long. So I think that for everyone that's not necessarily on the same page, it's a little hard to follow some of it, which is fine. But I think
No,
that if you can at least show them how to add this into a solution, how easy it is to add the configuration, then things like establishing the relationship to the session to add stuff is going to make a little more sense.
totally. Yeah, I do apologize. I had a game plan and I kind of it never goes according to plan.
You're doing just fine.
Well, and I feel like this with a lot of the things that I bring sometimes I feel like I need 3 hours to go through it and I try to crunch it down. But so here's a contact solution. We just created this from scratch. So let's go into layout mode and go ahead and add this as an add-on. So that is installing, and that's going to bring in the sessions table, the virtual list table, and a couple custom functions, and a folder of scripts. So I'm going to make just a little bit of room up here. I'll drag that on, and that's going to give you 2 buttons that lets you run 2 scripts. So first we'll do launch sessions with script track, and that brings you to the layout that we were looking at earlier, but it looks a little bare. There's not going to be any records in here yet. By default, it's not going to create the sessions. So we're going to go into file options. Now this file doesn't have any scripters already, but if it did, we would subscript them to the existing scripts. So we'll do
and Jake, those buttons that you dragged on screen, I take it for most people watching this, that's something they're going to put in like their preferences or settings or system area of their database, because that's not something that people like.
No, you would not want your users to access this. I personally don't put them anywhere on my IL. There is nowhere to get to them. I just it's a way to get to the actual demo portion of it, and there has to be some the way add-on work is you need to have some sort of object that gets dragged on there, and I couldn't drag on the whole layout. So there's a button that goes to the layout. What I usually do that actually I really like, this is one of my files, is I work with the custom menus. For those who haven't played with custom menus, it's a different conversation, but you can customize these toolbars up here. So I created a developer tab. I've got my dev tools, and I can open up sessions. I recently put in open recent scripts right below that, but not in this file. So
very cool, Jake. You're going right in the deep end again. Walk us through installing this first.
Yep, no problem. So we're going to go to file options again, and script triggers on first window open. We're going to put the sessions open script, and on last window close, the sessions close. Again, if you already have scripts assigned here, you just need to subscript them somewhere in there. And then we'll hit OK. Now I'm going to close and reopen the file so that it runs the on first window open script. So now we've got a record. And one thing you'll notice
so after you install this, Jake, do you need to close your solution and reopen it so that it does the first window initialize?
Correct. It will start logging sessions for anyone who logs in after you install it. So if I install it and then my coworker logs in 20 seconds later or 10 minutes later, they're all good. But if I don't close my FileMaker and reopen it, it's not going to run the on first window open script and not going to create a session. The alternative is when you first install it, you can just manually run that script. Just hit that play button and run it yourself.
But by the time you close it and come back in, it's all, you don't have to do anything. It's automatic.
You got it. One thing you notice is sometimes the number of scripts don't line up here. That's because a script has run since this portal was refreshed. Since this is the current session, I've currently run 2 scripts in this login. If there's more than one record, you can change records and that'll correct itself, as we can switch to list view and then go right on back, and then we can see both scripts that have run so far. So that's logging the sessions. Now, as far as logging the scripts, let's see what we got in contacts. It's got some pretty basic ones, but go to object. We'll do a set variable here, capture error. Now we're going to want the initialization. All right, so there's like a super bare bones running a single script step and capturing the error for it. So let's go back to that. Oh, close that out. Should bring us back to contacts. So we'll throw a button on here. That's going to run that script. And we're going to tell it to go to a test object. And then we'll do another one, but tell it to go to a real object.
And so then, Jake, too, if I've already got all my databases, I already have all these complicated scripts. What I could do is install yours in, go to some of those complicated processes I have. I don't necessarily have to remove anything I have, but add your initialize, add your capture, and add your errors. And suddenly all the stuff I already have will start capturing it into your system for me.
Correct.
So like one of my clients has this really complicated reminder system. And when it fails, they always come to me and go, Christian, why did it fail? And I've built all these breadcrumbs over the years, I tell them, to try to solve the mystery. This would really give me a lot of information to help solve that mystery.
Exactly. And if it helps, I can show you a script that's not very complicated, but definitely has some moving parts where I am capturing some errors in existing one.
I don't know if David's last thing was just a comment or a question. Do people want to see, let's see if anyone raised their hands. We want to see Jake do a couple more simple things or show us one that's more complicated that's already built?
Actually, so I got to.
Oh, well, excuse me.
Perfect.
There are questions hiding off in the depths of YouTube and Twitch. Please, could you explain the persistent ID?
Yeah. So, Christian, do you actually have a good explanation for that? I mean, I can pull up
for persistent ID.
Persistent ID. Yep.
Yeah, so if you guys think about it, like your computer has a username, it might say Christian Olson or Jake, but you can get on the computer and you can change that. Your persistent ID is the computer's UUID number that never changes. So you can track whether or not a machine logs back into the database again. Nick was actually the one that taught me about this when he released a demo file some years ago. It's like a UUID for your computer.
I think if you like factory reset your computer is the only way to reset it, to my knowledge. There's some like it's difficult to reset it.
I don't know the answer to that. I know that gaming companies use it to ban gamers who cheat. And what I heard is you have to buy I heard you have to buy a new PC. So I don't know if with FileMaker and persistent ID if it's changeable.
I might be thinking of a different one of these.
That's more we're off in the weeds again. Simple version, your computer has an ID number. Jake tracks to see if your computer logs back in versus you as a user or the account name. And Jake, I think it'd be good to keep it simple for now. That way people can experiment, they see how it works, and then they can come and they can add it into their more complicated things. And I consider myself a fairly proficient engineer, but it took me about 3 times of you showing me this before it started to make sense. So I like that simple one you have in there. I like that you added kind of a new button into the contacts one. But maybe even, is there any buttons on the contact screen for a script that already exists that you could tie?
Well, I looked at the existing scripts folders that came with the contacts, and there are 2.
There's nothing.
Scripts that
I would have used starting point, but you know.
Yeah.
I can't interrupt Margaret. Margaret has some questions for you.
Yes. Okay. Sorry, not to like derail us back. Last question. At the moment, does it have an influence on speed? Basically just tracking all of these scripts.
Not one that I have noticed. That's a really good question. And I've had sessions where I have been logged in for way longer than I should have been, and had hundreds of scripts. I think the most amount of scripts that I have captured during one session was like 12 or 1300, and there was no effect on performance.
And Jake, you're mentioning the number of scripts because for whoever it is that asked that from Twitch, what Jake is doing is actually really smart here. He's not setting any fields. He's not committing anything to the database. He's storing something in a variable, so it's all being stored in RAM. So until that list becomes gargantuously large, it shouldn't have a major impact on performance. So Jake, when you're saying, hey, I had a really long session, what you're saying is that list of scripts and information got quite large and you didn't notice a degradation in performance.
Correct.
But if someone had a monster long session of doing lots of script things, foreseeably there could be some impact on performance, but you'd have to be into the millions of characters in those arrays. Typically, I've noticed for myself in the data viewer, unless I have variables in the millions, it's not too heavy in terms of what the load that it adds.
Those are the questions on my end. So, whatever you guys want to do over the next 8 minutes.
Well, I've got one other thing I wanted to touch on from looking at my notes. And again, I apologize, guys, for being all over the place. There is so much going on here, and it's a little hard to stay organized with this. If anyone does ever have any questions, feel free to reach out to support at RC or me directly. My email is just jake.scheele@RC Consulting. Yeah, I'm happy to answer.
Or just if you send an email to the support one too, we can field it to Jake in case you don't spell his name there. Jake, in the details screen there where it says admin and Mac OS, those aren't buttons so much as just detailed information from the left. Is that correct?
They are popovers.
Okay. To give you blown up information. Okay. I think you did show that to us.
I just give additional information. Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to touch on is that when we look at a script that runs, you've got these fields that have been empty so far. And the whole reason they have been empty is because it is going based off of a display field. So we set this up in the sessions, and I'm kind of showing you. I do have it commented. So display. This is just one example of it. Any field that you name display will get saved in your script that run. So for example, if we go to contacts and we create a field called display, we're just going to make that a text calculation. And I hope they have a full name. Huh. So now that the contacts table has a display field, that should show up when we run a script from there. Now there needs to be a record first. So let's throw in a John Doe. And then we're going to run that fail and take a look at the script. So let's refresh our list. There's our script that just ran. And now we've got John right there on that display. The second one's going to be the primary key. And this is really, you don't need the primary key or the title for any of this to work. It's just beneficial information for you to know, hey, this is the record I was on when the script ended. Of course, you can copy the primary key and go and do whatever you need with it. So primary key is going to come from, that's actually in the capture details JSON function. So, oh, my bad, get primary key function. So in the get primary key function, it has you put in your PK field name. And in all of my databases, I always use the primary key field ID _ primary. It's that in every single database that I write these days. I know RC likes to do ID _ table name, I believe. So for RC's naming convention, you would just swap this out with ID _ and get layout table name. And now it would work with RC's naming conventions. From what I saw in, here, go back, so we can take a look at this database in contacts, it looks like they just call it primary key. So we can just copy that, go into the get primary key custom function, swap that out, save that. And if we run a script again, refresh the list. Now we've got the primary key.
Too snazzy, Jake. Hey, Lynn in Twitch was asking, so you store all the stuff in the global variable, keeps things light, and you've kind of showed this, but can you show Lynn then, how does that actually go into the session record? When is that being set? And
Right
Lynn
now,
says it's probably related to the last closed window, but not positive.
You're on the right track, Lynn. So this script, you would assign to the on last window close in your file, or subscript the existing on last window close script if you have one. And it's going to perform a find for your current session. And then it does, so it's the scripts variable, which is set scripts. It takes that global variable and stores it in the script results field. So it just takes that big JSON array and sticks that big array in that one field. And that is how it gets stored. And then deep end again, but it takes that array and makes it look pretty right here. Yeah, and we kind of touched on this earlier. This was again where we started going into the deep end stuff, but you can set this field sooner.
And Jake, I'm going to just do a shameless plug since we do have a couple minutes before I have to jet out. If you like some of the stuff that Jake brings you guys here, and you do think he's really sharp and could help you, he doesn't have a lot of availability, but Jake does do some coaching for RCC now. And if you are interested in seeing if he could help you, reach out to our support, and I can see if Jake could fit you in his schedule. So just had to do at least one shameless plug while we're supposed here.
And I promise when I am not trying to cram 3 hours of content into one, I am more organized and articulate.
Yeah, absolutely. The live streams have a way of
it's the pressure, man.
Jake, it's hard to convey.
Difficult.
It's challenging sometimes to. I have this. I build things and then you get on. And it's hard to take what's in here sometimes and put it out. But I get reviews from your clients, and so far we've had nothing but beaming responses from the people that Jake's had the opportunity to work with. So usually he's not having to dissect his most significant creations for people on the phone.
No, thank you very much for coming on. Seriously, thank you very much, Jake, for coming on with this fantastic session. Seriously, you did totally fine. And thank you, Christian, for coming on as well, both to help with the conversation and to ask questions and to be here in general.
This is great. I'm actually gonna install this myself because I've been wanting to learn how to use it, and I'm gonna start playing around with it. And then when I have questions, I'm gonna go bother Jake and see if he can't help me with them. But I'm actually personally gonna be looking to use this. Because my main client works with iPads, and trying to figure out why things don't work is really frustrating. I have a lot of processes that run on server or SASE that are automated, and when they don't work, having information to try to tell the story is really useful. So I like the fact that Jake has already done all the heavy lifting for me, and I just need to go in and put my bread, lettuce, meat, and the other piece of bread to make it work. Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Christian, for helping keep me on the tracks.
No, thank you very much, both of you. Okay, with that being said, thank you everyone for coming. Seriously, thank you very much. I hope you all have a lovely Friday. We will see you.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Bye.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!